Hi all, welcome back to Sunshine Sue Show. Thank you all for those who have subbed to my channel and supported me. As you see, I'm struggling. I'm getting videos out every 2 days. The purpose or the reason for the struggle is there's no wars in the world. There's vaccines, that kind of thing, and it's hard to cover topics today because there's not much happening in the world right now. We've had the bombings throughout all the world in August, and I think that's to do with underground tunnels, that kind of thing, but we're never going to hear the truth about that, are we? In this kind of world, things happen and we don't hear the truth, because that's the world we live in right now, because we live in a world of deception. And talking about deception, we will criticise Trump today. He said two things. He said we will support Space Force, continue supporting them, and we will continue pushing the vaccine thing, which I think that should never happen. Vaccine should not happen because we have cures. Shanghai came out with the Pro-Drip form of vitamin C, fact-checked, and by the Karens, fact-checkers said that's not true. Farron cat checkers, they came in with the Italy thing where they said this is disease, the blood clot, and aspirins and salt. Karen fact checkers, they stopped that as well. And then we had Trump with the hydro, and the Karen fact checkers, they came in again, even though it was a doctor conference, that kind of thing, and now there's been a reversal and the hydro drugs coming back. But why are they still pushing the vaccines? Then Australia, they came out with this new drug, with a zinc form type drug, and they came out in Sky News, same thing. The media wouldn't cover it. I don't know about the fact checkers, but I would say the fact checkers will be out there stopping that as well, because it hasn't reached mainstream news. Sky News Australia is not mainstream news because it has to be a lefty. Radical left have to control everything, control information, control politics as they do. We've got Ardern in New Zealand, controls politics, shuts down big businesses, shuts down oil businesses, so that we rely on low-income jobs. Low-income jobs require a lot of certificates. So when you want a job, you have to fill in certificates to get that job. That kind of thing. You have to go to university, spend years doing university, and have loans for the rest of your life. The other jobs require certificates, filling in certificates and forms. Then they dock your pay every week and take the money out for that. So this is the world we live in right now. Overseas, it's even worse. You have to have licenses, renew your IDs every year because the IDs run out. You have to renew certificates for the job, and often it's $100 a month or something just to get those fees done. And then you have to have a sponsor for that, and so the employer is not paying enough money. Well, the same thing in New Zealand. I would say that the employers should pick up these things. If you want to employ someone, you should pay for all their certificates, pay for all their information. And they shouldn't have to go out online. I guess that creates business. You know, you have people doing online certificates. So you can go out to some contractor and pay $330 for a license that you need, forklift, whatever it is. Everything costs money. And once you get the license, it's there forever. But then you need to upgrade your licenses and upgrade to get a better pay. And so it's just mind-boggling, the paperwork today. If it was removed, paperwork, it would be a much better place. And I want to talk, we'll get back to Space Force in a minute. House prices, same thing. You need a license to do that, license to do that, license to do that. And by the end of it, you know, everything costs lots more money. So nobody can afford a home anymore. Then we become tenants to outside interests, that kind of thing. Well, we're a global world now, but outside interests own us. And so that's not good for the health of our country, but we belong to United Nations now because in 2008, New Zealand decided to be part of United Nations. Well, we're talking about the deception of Space Force. We'll get back to that. The deception is that we can get to Mars, that we have a rover there right now. But on Devon Island, we have a rover wandering around there too. And the visual effects of rover look exactly like the visual effects of Mars. Mars and Devon Island, same landscape. And the fact checkers, they've been pretty hard on it. The only real way to cover Devon Island and Mars is their actual documentaries, where they're doing it, where they have the rover going around, that kind of thing. So if you look down on my playlist, I've got lots and lots of stuff you can watch, and lots of it's documentaries and pro Mars, pro everything else, but it looks so fake. It's unbelievable. But forget that for a minute. The deception of space, going into space, funding Space Force. Do you think that he should continue funding Space Force? And my answer to that is yes, he should. Because people have Star Trek fantasies and they need that fulfilled. And also you can use the rocket launches, that kind of thing, put them into movies and TV series and the astronauts and these amazing guys. And if people find out the truth, it's going to open up a can of worms. People will realise that the moon landings in 1969 didn't happen. They were jumping on a trampoline, that kind of thing, and they were on wires at the back, harnesses we call them, harnesses, and they made them invisible so you couldn't quite see the harnesses, but you could see that the walk was a harness walk. And then they jumped in one spot with, as I said, stuff in front of them, so you couldn't quite see where they were jumping on the ground, which was unusual. Why didn't you just show us jumping up and down? Why do you have to jump behind equipment? So they're saying they jumped on a trampoline, which makes more sense because they're jumping a lot higher than they were when they were walking. And sometimes when they're walking, they didn't quite jump the same amount. And so it seemed to be quite fake, the whole thing. And you could tell it was a harness walk, just the way it was. And when they're in space, the head leans that way and it shouldn't. And then arms go missing in space, that kind of thing. Well, getting back to the deception of Space Force, I think, yes, these things should still be funded. Yes, I think they should still do the deception of astronauts, that kind of thing, because people have Star Trek fantasies and people aren't ready for the truth, they're not ready for the craziness, and it's going to cause an outcry, and people aren't ready for it right now. Some people are learning the truth, but it takes time, over a period of time, for people to learn the truth. And I don't think we should be fast-tracking vaccines, because fast-tracking vaccines is bringing a thing that's going to harm us, because you can't fast-track it, it needs a period of time. But he did say he was going to fast-track Space Force, and he never really did that, because by now he's meant to be in Mars. And that's when they're talking about NASA having no funding, that kind of thing, by the Democrats. And it doesn't quite make sense, and why Elon Musk was able to do all this stuff. Now, why did Elon Musk say we live in a simulation after he launches into space and says we live in a simulation? Look at my last video. See how it ties up. Elon Musk talking about AI. Elon Musk, what else these days? Looks so fake it must be real when he looks at his own car. Look back on my last video and exposed that Elon is kind of saying, but people aren't even ready for that truth. They still believe that there was a Tesla car in space. They're not ready for the truth. That's fine. Keep that Star Trek fantasy going because people aren't ready for the truth. CIA, that kind of thing, still operating. We still have bad JSW judges that are going to convict people like Roger Stone, that kind of thing. Done nothing wrong, even though Russiagate was exposed as a complete lie. He's still meant to be a spy for Russiagate, right? But the whole Russiagate thing has been a con job, and they realise that. Then we have WikiLeaks. We had the guy that died, just trying to think of his name, Seath. Anyway, he died, and he was stabbed in the back. They were meant to be a robbery, and it wasn't really a robbery. He was assassinated. And he was a WikiLeaks guy providing that information. And then we have Shadowgate. InfoWars came out with a documentary, Millie Weaver. And I don't know, I have no clues about, I haven't been watching InfoWars enough, and I know nothing about Shadowgate. But as far as information goes, I think information is tracked and has been tracked. I think it happens on both sides. I think, yes, Trump was spied on, that kind of thing, and it's a possibility that he's spying on these corrupt politicians, because if you're corrupt, you should be spied on, really. I mean, but Trump wasn't corrupt, and they were spying on him, and he was a candidate. But, you know, Joe Biden, he should be spied on, because But he can't, because he's made himself a candidate for the Democrats, and so he cannot be spied on. And so we have the Space Force thing going in space, and I think, yes, we should support it. So that's not an anti-Trump thing at all, but I do think he's misleading you when he says that we should be going to the moon and we should be going to the Mars. Well, there's a lot of shoulds there, isn't there? Because, you know, we can't go there. We can't go to space right now. We live in an enclosed space. And we had the Erebus crash, 1975, I think it was, or 1979, one of the two. And that was a flight from Christchurch with a 707 type of plane. It wasn't a 707, but it was a type of plane because it was a long time ago. And they had that going from Christchurch to Antarctica and back. But the planes never crossed Antarctica, never ever crossed. And they said it hit a volcano and it was on a flat surface plane, like a flat. Where was the volcano? You know, these things happen. And if you're in enclosed space, it would be a lot lower in the enclosed space than if Earth was on an enclosed space. So we have the simulation theory, flat Earth theory, and God. And we have a round Earth theory, but the round Earth theory kind of makes sense, but doesn't really. If you can't get out into space, there's a lot of deceptions going on. Why can you not cross Antarctica with a plane? It would be a shorter route from New Zealand, go to South America, go across Antarctica, but then you could say there was 300-mile-an-hour winds, so you can't get across. So that could be a reason. Need to hear it. Not hearing anything, can't fly over. We look at McMurdo, the winds aren't that bad, and they say they're on Antarctica. But they're lying, because the Scott base is on an island, and every New Zealander knows that the Scott base is on an island off Antarctica. It's not in Antarctica. And we were always taught here at school, everywhere that we lived, that Scott base was on an island, but they keep saying they're Antarctica. In a way they are. It's like if you live on Stewart Island, you're part of New Zealand. You're not part of the North Island, South Island, but you're part of New Zealand. You can go across in a boat, and you know, and you're part of New Zealand. It's just the third biggest island. You've got other islands too, like Native Island and a whole bunch of islands really in New Zealand, but nobody lives on them. And yeah, you know, might get the odd hermit on them that might be escaping from this COVID thing and living on an island. I knew people that lived on boats, literally in Stewart Island, living on boats, and they had that Stewart Island shop to go to. Very expensive way to live. They were from Holland, a lot of these people that were just wanted to have a hermit type life, but they needed to be near the shop, so they had some supplies. So they would be parked in Patterson Inlet and be using the shop there. Here I am giving away stuff about New Zealand. So New Zealand is an interesting place. There are some interesting places in Stewart Island and New Zealand, and there are some isolated places. You want to escape from COVID, I suggest Fiordland would be the place to escape, because there's nothing there and lots of bush, and you know they've had rangers chasing people, deer stalkers, that kind of thing. It's like the Wild West, Fiordland. So if you want to escape COVID and all these rules, go and live in Fiordland, maybe come out to the Te Anau shops and then come on back. And so that would be the way to escape COVID, is in the outback of New Zealand. Then you could possum trap or that kind of thing and make a living, eel trapping and fishing, and come and do the local shopping and selling your stuff to the fish suppliers. You could get away with that kind of a life in New Zealand, but there are people up north that do it, up Northland, who live off the land. Very hard to do, but it's happening. I guess, and there are places in Alaska, that kind of thing, they're doing that kind of thing. So, you know, people are living off the land, but it's very, very tough to do. And you do, at the end of the day, need a shop, because at the end of the day you need to buy medical supplies and shopping goods. So here we are, you know, we want to talk about Space Force. So there's not much happening in the world, you know, no wars. We are in a good place in the world right now, and coming up to New Zealand elections in October, and we're coming up to American elections in 1st, 2nd or 4th of November. So there's a time now, and people don't know who to vote for in New Zealand. As I said, National and Labour. There's only, you can vote for Christian parties, that kind of thing, but they won't make 5%. So you need to vote for a party. Destiny Church want people to vote for their party. They won't make 5%. So you have to be careful of who you have to go on the polls and that, and who's over 5%. Because if you're not over 5%, your vote doesn't count under 5%. So it's really difficult to know who to vote for. And as I said, National and Labour gave New Zealand to the United Nations, so they're just pretty much New World Order parties. And then you have New Zealand First and ACT and Greens. The Greens, 4%. The Greens destroy this country, really. I mean, they're not about the environment. They say they are, but they're not. And they're just creating more social policies, creating more laws for housing and more permits, that kind of thing. At the end of the day, the poor need to have their own homes. They don't want to sit in hotels because can't build a house fast enough to put them in a house. So there needs to be a second type of house, maybe on Maryland or that kind of thing, or government land. Start building a town of substandard houses, so at least people can live and have their own home and provide jobs. This is the other thing. People need to be in Auckland to be near the jobs, but we got minimum wages and a $700 a week rent plus to live in Auckland. It's really hard. You can flat for $200 a week to have your own room maybe, and share a kitchen, that kind of thing, and hope like heck your flatmates don't rob you, and hope like heck that one of your flatmates is paying the rent, because the guy foots the bill for the house and flatmates don't pay the rent, he has to pay it. And so it's really tough between tenants and landlords right now. It's the only people that are making money seem to be the landlords. Then you've got bad tenants who know how to work the system, and you've got the good tenants who are paying a lot of money, and they're paying for all these bad tenants. And the way the laws are, it's protecting tenants these days. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you for subbing to my channel. God bless. God bless you all. Thank you all.